Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Hello, everyone. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. I hope this podcast finds you in good health and safe, secure. We're going to continue with the Lankavatara, which is basically a teaching in the format of a question and answer. If you certainly have picked up so far that Mahamati, the monk who's interlocuting with Shakyamuni, actually represents the entire student body of Shakyamuni, whose practice thus far has been based on the earliest teachings of Buddhism, and that as they're transitioning to this Mahayana level of understanding, level of learning, level of experiencing, practice toward the goal of emancipation, enlightenment, awakening, their egos still firmly remain in place because they haven't really learned how to let go of that essential borderline. They've worked tremendously on controlling, understanding the relationship between mind and body, but their, how shall I say, their cognitive body, their idea of mind, is still very much tied to their ego. So you could say, for instance, we spend our lives learning in modern times how to break habits, yeah? Our bad habits, we used to call them, like smoking or drinking or cussing or temperaments, whatever, all about behavior being habit. And we're accurate. 3,000 years ago, Shakyamuni, well, the translations would tell us Shakyamuni was talking about habit energy. But see, he coupled that human behavior with the source of all phenomena, energy. Habit energy makes sense because we understand that it's kind of like a snowball or turning wheel, an inertia, a momentum, that we continuously return to certain behavioral norms. And those norms are normal only for our habit energy, right? We do things not because we need to do them, or we perceive a need to do them because of our addiction to that habit energy, right? But I don't think I've ever met somebody, but I'll say most of the people that I've met who have, quote, quit smoking will adopt, whether they say it this way or not, will adopt the mindset that they have quit the smoking. that their power, I mean, talk to anybody in one of those, insert term here, anonymous programs, those 12-steppers. I mean, they start out by saying, this is inescapable, but I'm managing it. It's so egotistical, as though the rudiment of being is addiction and can never be escaped, but only negotiated. That's a hell of a way to start or to continue living. How many lead weights are you going to put on the back of your neck that you're going to carry along with you through life? It's just a different form of misery. Evisceration, powerlessness. I am a this, but I have managed to keep it at bay for this amount of time. See, a Buddhist should abhor that kind of thinking, because that's very egotistical. It maintains this illusion that it is this assemblage of ego, identity. In fact, it is identity. I am a this is the most identifying statement you can make. But you are not a that. That is something you do. And whether you choose to continue doing it or not, it's just a different form of the same illusion. You haven't fixed anything. You're incrementally less inundated by that behavior, but you're maintaining it completely as a reality of identification. So that's very different than what Buddhism promotes. In that same context, Buddhism says all of it. All of your thoughts, attachments, habits, energy, the way you are, is a result of conscious decision making. You are constructing the self. And so if you finally come to terms when all of life is a construction, moment to moment, then finally, if you really get that, you can be unaddicted. You can cease the formations, in the words from the earlier sutras. Cease those formations. From the Four Noble Truths, cease those formations. Cease those habit energies. And then you can experience everything for what it is, without stress, without anxiety, without identifying, making permanent, making self a construct, simply enacting selfness, being the energy that is in momentum, along with everything else. No convoluted construction of relationship other than beingness. Wow, what a relief. What a joy. Look, this is all of experience becomes something I can participate in, be immersed in, without the push-pull charismas and attachments and addictions and just be all that you can. life affirming. No denials, no attachments. Simply be among, be with, be in the stream that is your karmic expression. And whenever some of that karmic expression indicates habit energies that would have you do things that are not life affirming, well, then you can see that coming very clearly, and you can not respond to it, or you can convert it into a strength or simply a perception. We don't want to deny the existence of fire. Fire has many uses. It can be very destructive, but sometimes destruction is a good thing. It's a matter of how you engage with life. See, it's that relationship. And our mind is the tool. Our mind is the observer, the influencer, and the influenced. So we have to be vigilant. This is why we try to maintain our Gohonzon, our mind of Buddha-ness. See that scroll behind me? That's not the Gohonzon. If you've been on this channel for any amount of time, you know this. You should know this. Anyone who practices Nichiren's doctrine of the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni's wonderful universal method of self-enlightenment, knows that the Gohonzon is a mental state. It's a word indicating that portal that leads us to unaddiction, ceasing of the formations, the liberation from. See, many people misunderstand liberation. They think that liberation means you go there. You are no longer here. But that's an identification problem. Liberation is in the mind. What's your attitude? What is your intent? How are you thinking, considering, inculcating your environs and yourself in this momentum of life? How do you see yourself? So this word self is kind of problematic, and we're running into that in the Lankavatara, right? With these terms, these English translations of self-realization. Is it a self? Is it no self? Is it not no self? Is it, right? This is where the words kind of get lost. Because the referential tool is this emergent property of life we call mind. Mind isn't an organ somewhere in your body. It's not your brain. So right off the bat, if you understand the concept of mind, you understand it's not attached. It's not an appendage hanging off my ear, right? But everything is like that. So the liberation, the emancipation, the unattachedness, these are words that have a lot of charisma attached to them. What we're talking about is how our observer, our witness, our mind uses the rest of our senses, sees, hears, tastes, touches, so on. How it makes permanent, how it possesses, how it understands this process we call life. And that process is unattached because it's a process happening moment to moment. There is no attaching. This is why reaching that mind, observer, witness achieves awakening, achieves liberation, because in the very insight that provides our understanding, our prajna, our Buddha wisdom, see, that's all happening in mind. The attachment simply vanishes. It doesn't take effort. What takes effort is being awake. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for helping grow this Sangha. Your likes, when you subscribe, and patrons, your support. A lot of YouTubers say, buy me a cup of coffee. I don't know. I might start putting a little blurb on the video as it begins or as it ends. Buy me a cup of coffee. I love my coffee. I almost feel like that's asking too much because the price of coffees these days, oh my goodness. But really, it only takes a minute, either on Patreon or PayPal.me /Sifu Sylvain. Doesn't take long to toss me $1. It's not for me. It's for this channel, for the equipment, for the web connection. It's just, that's the world today. Everything is costly. But look at the wonder of what it provides us. Right now, I'm talking to you all over the world, whenever you're watching this. That's amazing. You can download the audio podcast, listen to them whenever you want, repeatedly. Right? Easy to do. A website with a lot of free information, threefoldlotus.com. Books, mandalas. You guys are precious. And this Sangha exists to keep you motivated, to keep me motivated. So, thank you. Now, let's dive into this sometimes frustrating argument. I say argument because Mahamati, this personage that stands for all the students that are having a hard time grasping this Mahayana idea, they're kind of stuck. They're having a really hard time getting this separation of addiction in mind, this constant permanentizing and hanging on to, even though they've learned to recognize all of their habit energies, they still view themselves as the central master of those habit energies. They still don't get that habit energy is just energy. The habit is in the mind. And if they still own, no matter how well defined, still own the habit energy as well understood as they think they know, they haven't yet achieved that letting go. And I think this is why the word revulsion is used in here, because it's almost like a puking away of this habit energy. Huh? Let's continue. Mahamati. The inborn view of an individual personality as held by the stream entered is destroyed in this way. When this body, which belongs equally to each of us, is considered, it is perceived that it consists of form and the other four skandhas, right? The consciousnesses of vision, sound, taste, feeling. That form takes its rise from the elements and their belongings. Interesting. So even the elements that we have defined in early Buddhism, that through the Nidana, for instance, that all of these different elements, the component parts of addiction, energy formations into form, right? That those two have belongings. They themselves are attached. It's an interesting way to flip the dialogue of tendencies and conditions. You could say that something, some energy with tendencies and conditions, because it has tendencies and conditions, is modified by its attachment to those tendencies and conditions. Why not? It's not an untrue statement. It's just a different way of talking about the same thing, yes? How everything is an amalgam that grows to be some form, some thing. That the elements are mutually conditioning, right? They both are influenced and influence, continuously manifesting potentials of form. And that hence there is no aggregate known as a form. Because if you understand that a form is just this super fast moment to moment amalgamation of changing, constantly changing tendencies and conditions affecting and being affected, that ultimately there's no thing, because everything is constantly roiling and changing all the time, moment to moment. So you go from the initial thoughts of creating a form and having a thing to, going right past that, because the thing is just a quiet little moment of observation of the process that's going right by. Once again, I'm reminded of quantum mechanics and quantum theory, right? That wave, everything is energy, everything is waves, everything is fields of potential. And that we identify a photon, a hydrogen atom, whatever it is, at that level. We identify something, that whole wave, in the language of quantum, collapses. Well, that's convenient rhetoric, but does a wave collapse? No. Our observation and identification of the actions, tendencies, and conditions of that field, of that energy, we are the ones who collapse. And we manifest a thing within the potential of what that can manifest. At that very level, this is why there's a whole science now of quantum fields, right? And quantum gravity. And it brings me back to Penrose and his CCC. It's so elegant. And it's very, very much in line with the dialogue we have in Buddhism about potential, formation, and form. Form being an operating illusion of samsara, because form implies permanence. I've now identified that. I have a hydrogen atom. I have a motorcycle. I have you. There's that ego. it would be quite shattering, I think, in the scientific community to have a scientist point out that the collapse of a wave function is actually the ego at work. He probably would be drummed out for saying that, but it's actually what's happening. To have the unmitigated ego of saying that you understand the fields that have created this entire universe and that you now own a little piece of it, it's pretty arrogant, really, if you think about it. Anyway, let's go on here. So when this body, which belongs equally to each of us, is an interesting statement, isn't it? You've heard me talk about this body, idea of body, really in Buddhism is the entire universe. It's the body of energy from which we identify this little momentum of unfathomably innumerable amalgams of energy instantiating moment to moment, and we have the ego to call out a me as though we're an individual separate from the entirety of the universe. We're not. We're just a manifestation of that field of sentient minds. Not that there's a great sentient mind of the universe. Not at all. Just that our component energies provide for a grouping of energies that emerges a mind, a witness, which can only exist while this is happening. When this body, which belongs equally to each of us, is considered the body universe, it is perceived that it consists of form and the other four skandhas. That form takes its rise from the elements and their belongings, that the elements are mutually conditioning, and that hence there is no aggregate known as form. Ultimately, everything is forming. Everything is a formation. It's in momentum. It's moving constantly. And that hence there is no aggregate known as form. When thus the stream entered realized that the idea of being and non-being is a partial view of truth, the view of individual personality is destroyed. The ego. The ego is a vantage point, not a thing. Again, the ego is made permanent. And that's the mistake. That's the primary illusion. The ego is just an observer. It's a point of view, literally. When the view of individual personality is thus destroyed, covetousness will never assert itself. In other words, desire will never assert itself because you're just in it. There's nothing to desire. Everything is there. That is Buddha-ness. This Mahamati is what characterizes the view of individual personality. So he's trying to break this down for Mahamati so he can get out of his own way, right? Again, Mahamati, as regards the nature of doubt. When the Dharma is attained and realized and thoroughly understood as to its characteristics, and when the twofold view of individual personality is destroyed as previously described, no doubt is cherished in the teaching of the Buddhas. Well, what are you doubting? Everything is here. What is there to doubt? Once you make that mental shift, from ownership to experience. Experience is experience. There's no doubt in that. And there is no thought in the minds of the stream entered to follow the lead of any other teacher because of the difference between purity and non-purity. And this goes back to something else I've often said, is that there is no teacher other than one's own mind. Your experience is your teacher. And all of these words that I share with you, all of these thoughts that I share with you, insights that I have experienced and I share with you, are just more ways of dialoguing so that you and your experience can glean your own insights. So in that way, I'm a bodhisattva facilitating, but I'm not teaching you anything. I'm affording you opportunities, viewpoints, things that you may not have in so many words dissected for yourself. And in those words, find your own dissection and inspiration and influence to get your aha moments, your insights. Those are you teaching you, not me teaching you. Shakyamuni understood this implicitly. This Mahamati is what is meant by doubt discarded, by the stream entered. Once you enter that stream of momentum, you get it, and the ego dissolves. It just occurs spontaneously. This is what we do when we chant Namu. I am present and opening my gate to Buddhahood, Myoho Renge Kyo, Myoho Renge Kyo. And we spark that connection, that egolessness. Again, Mahamati, how is it that the stream entered do not hold themselves to the morality? They do not because they clearly see into the nature of suffering wherever they may be reborn. And you know, we've already hit on this, and I didn't stop to talk about it, but there's this linguistic of being born again and born in the future or born in the past, or clearly see into the nature of suffering wherever they may be reborn. These are all statements about the successive moments and how an aha moment is instantaneous and is like being born in a different realm, in a different time space. This is birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, moment to moment. What is meant by the holding, Mahamati, that the ignorant and simple-minded observe the rules of morality, piety, and penance, is because they desire thereby to attain worldly enjoyments and happiness. They cherish the hope of being born in agreeable conditions, and the stream entered do not hold to the rules of morality, for their thoughts are turning only toward the exalted state of self-realization. So there's that division from the ego. See, those who would observe piety, penance, worship, prayers, punishments, they're looking to negotiate their ego's position in a group of egos, society, to advantage themselves, to gain something earth samsarically. But if your goal is Buddha-ness, the clarity of the entire process of life, then of what use is this idle ego positioning? It's juvenile. It's just not even relevant, right? That's hard for a lot of people to abstract into their daily life. That's a tough. Some of it may be easy, but some of it will hang on, right? Dropping that ego, not an easy thing, especially with all our training. My gosh. Do I need to point out advertisements, programs, propaganda? It's all ego. Identity politics, it's ego. And the stream entered do not hold to the rules of mortality, for their thoughts are turning only towards the exalted state of self-realization, and the reason why they devote themselves to the details of morality is that they wish to master such truths as are in conformity with non-discrimination and undefiled outflows. This, Mahamadi, is the way in which the stream-entered ones hold to morality and piety. Mahamadi, by thus breaking up the three knots, the stream entered will discard covetousness, anger, and folly, stupidity. Mahamadi said, many kinds of covetousness are taught by the emancipated one. Oh, gosh. Which one of them is to be cast aside? The emancipated one replies, the world where love grows, i.e. the desire for sexual embrace, showing itself in beating, slapping, suggesting, kissing, embracing, smelling, looking sidewise, or gazing, may give one momentary pleasures, but is productive of future grief. Right? With the stream entered, there is no greed for such, because they are abiding in the bliss of the samadhi which they have attained. Hence this casting aside, but not of the desire for nirvana. So we maintain, again, this is about attitude, my friends. When you understand the maximal potential of life, it's not that we annihilate all of samsara, it's that it ceases to draw our addiction to it in form, in possession. This is exactly why Nichiren once told a couple to chant as they made love. Have you ever tried that? It's not easy. Again, Mahamadi, what is the fruit of the one's... Well, here we go. Again, Mahamadi, what is the fruit of the once returning? There is once in them the discrimination of forms, signs, and appearances, but as they learn not to view individual objects under the aspect of qualified and qualifier or qualifying, and as they know well that what marks the attainment of dhyana, they once come back into the world and, putting an end to suffering, realize nirvana. Hence the appellation, once returning. Do you see how this is birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death? That once you gain that aha moment, where all your addictions vaporize, and you see truth, the reality of life, the universe, energy, undistinguishable from the entire process in samsara, everything you witness. Well, you're still human, you're still here. So you return, kind of like if you've ever chanted for an hour and you reach that state that you're vibrating and the mandala seems to dematerialize, and you stop and you feel the oxygen moving through your body, you're re-entering this life. You'll never again be the same, because as you re-enter it and re-experiencing all the habit energies grasping at you, you'll never not know that again. Once returning, right? Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the never returning? It means that while there is yet the viewing of individual objects as characterized by being and non-being in the past, present, and future, the discrimination does not return with its errors and faults. The dormant passions do not assert themselves, and the knots are completely cut off, never to return. Hence the appellation never returning. After enough of those aha moments where you turn away from your chanting, your invoking of your Buddha-ness, and you return into your samsaric life, you do that enough times, and you'll notice, I have noticed, there's a sort of a falling away. And I have to admit to you, it's a little disconcerting. Because after a certain amount of time, I started to realize that there were moments when I thought, I'm losing myself. I miss some of those things that drove me to do other things. And it's a different difficulty. In my practice, I've had to learn to let go of addictions that were deeply karmically rooted. They're just not happening anymore. And it's kind of unsettling because we get really comfortable in our attachments. And sometimes when profoundly they leave us, we understand what's happening, but at the same time, I've never been happier in my entire life. But more and more as my practice goes on, I'm less and less driven. Do you know what I mean? And yet when I look for where is my imagination, where is my drive, where is my want to investigate things, it continuously brings me back to Buddhist study, these videos, communicating with you. This is where my life is at its utmost. That's incredible. But I'm still adjusting. Nobody told me about this part of the practice. We are samsaric beings. We like our addictions. Let's just admit it. So have I become addicted to study and communication on Buddhism? Well, Shakyamuni says it. Hence this casting aside, but not of the desire for nirvana. So in a very brief sentence, he's really talking about bodhisattvahood. And isn't that the whole conversation of Lankavatara? Speaking to Mahamati, the personage of all of these bodhisattva mahasattvas, not just regular bodhisattvas, but well-educated bodhisattvas. People who in earlier forms of Buddhism considered themselves to be Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha, which I always joked meant practically a Buddha. It's probably not far from accurate. Mahamati said, after hearing that, now, the emancipated one declares that there are three kinds of arhats. That term is problematic, but you can see where Mahamati's coming from, the early teachings. You just can't let go of all the rules and privations that he had to follow. To him, that's the practice. He doesn't get it yet, because that's still very validating of an ego, isn't it? The term arhat is egotistical. To which one of the three is this term arhat to be applied? To one who makes straight away for the path of cessation? Or to one who neglects all his accumulated stock of merit for the sake of his vow to enlighten others? Or to one who is a form of the transmigration, Buddha? Still, again, in Buddhism, one thing is often described from 3 or 5 different perspectives, yes? So Mahamati is still stuck on these 3 being individually separate things, and they are not. So let's see how the emancipated one replies. Mahamati, the term arhat applies to the Shravaka who makes straight away for the path of cessation and to know others. Somebody who's practiced enough, who's learned enough, that they drop their attachment to selfness and move toward the completeness of cessation of all the habit energies. So it's a stage, yes? Mahamati, as for the others, they are those who have finished practicing the deeds of the Bodhisattva. They are forms of the transformation Buddha. With skillful means born of their fundamental and original vows, they manifest themselves among the multitudes in order to adorn the assemblages of the Buddhas. Mahamati, here in these paths and abodes of existence, they give out varieties of teachings which are based on discrimination, that is to say, as they are above such things as the attainment of fruit, accolades, the dhyanas, the dhyana practicers, or subjects for meditation, and as they know that this world is no more than what is seen of the mind itself. They discourse on the fruit attained for the sake of all beings. Further, Mahamati, if the stream entered should think, these are the fetters, but I am disengaged from them, there's that ego, they commit a double fault. They still hold to the vices of the ego, there it is, and they have not freed themselves from the fetters. So again, these are 3 different ways of looking at the ultimate practice of learning, moving toward the goal rather than the satisfaction of the learning and getting a gold star on your paper and your accomplishments, but rather seeing all of that learning being applied to realization. And contrary to what Mahamati is saying, is that we're not letting go of all the merits when we do this. We are moving on from the merits to help others navigate their own path to cessation. Cessation of what? Life? Things? Attachment. Cessation of the formations and our adherence, our habit energy of possessing form and simply seeing it being expressed. That's very exciting. It's a lot easier to do, really, than reaching and grasping for all of those forms so you can possess them. With skillful means born of their fundamental original vows, right? The reason you started doing this was to attain enlightenment. So go back to that fundamental mission, desire. They manifest themselves amongst the multitudes in order to adorn the assemblages of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas. We manifest ourselves amongst the multitudes. We take our moment-to-moment manifestation, but now we direct that manifestation of self, of repository of all the fields and waves of understanding, and we manifest ourselves amongst the ignorant and the unenlightened to guide them. This is a description of bodhisattva behavior, yeah? Mahamati, here in these paths and abodes of existence, they give out varieties of teachings which are based on discrimination. That is to say, as they are above such things as the attainment of fruit, the dhyana practicers or subjects for meditation, and as they know that this world is no more than what is seen in mind itself, they discourse on the fruit attained for the sake of all being. So having experienced and understood this journey, this path to freedom, this liberation, we communicate with the understanding of the very things that are the obstacles for others who don't understand yet. This is expedient means, right? We communicate at the level, at the place, at the habit energies of our audience without ourselves succumbing to those things. I mean, this is the behavior of a bodhisattva, yeah? Further, Mahamati, if the stream entered should think, these are the fetters, but I am disengaged from them, they commit the double fault. So this is a trepidatious road. You communicate at the level of your audience, but if you make the mistake of thinking that these fetters are real and that I am unaffected by them, now you've dropped. You've dropped away from your freedom, and you've based your knowledge on ego. And you've made two mistakes, labeling these fetters, these addictions as real. And secondly, by labeling them as real, you have fallen from your own understanding that they are not. And only the ego is responsible for doing that. As though you have achieved a fruit of disconnection. The disconnection is an illusion. The achievement is in not treating them as real. This is a difficult job of the bodhisattva, right? Because it's very familiar. They still hold to the vices of the ego, and they have not freed themselves from the fetters. Oops, I've gone on a long time. But this now we're getting to the meat of the Lankavatara, yeah? So we'll continue and we'll close this out. I have something circled here. We're going to get into something significant, but I'll save that for the next podcast video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking along with me. I just hope you have a magnificent day. The weather is doing flip-flops around here. We're having rain and overcast sky, but still, it's amazing. Just watching the process of weather is amazing, isn't it? It's fascinating. I am curious to hear your thoughts. If you have any to offer, please put them in the comments. Otherwise, please ponder these questions that are arising as the discussion of this Lankavatara Sutra continues. And don't forget to view everything, think of everything we're studying together from the perspective of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Because that ultimate teaching of Shakyamuni, although it is built on the shoulders of teachings of early Mahayana like this, are far more complete, and they offer us a very clear insight as to what is being discussed here. Right? You know this. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. I'm very proud of your practice. Keep it going. Be kind to yourself. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.